This
Can I hit record?
conference will now be recorded.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call, please.
Graham,
Yes, or present.
Mr. Kine, Mr. Malagranda,
Present.
Mr. McKinnon,
Here.
Ms. Morgan. Present. Mrs. O'Rourke.
Here.
All right. We do have a quorum, and as part of the quorum, we do have people meeting virtually that are not present at the village office. I am present along with trustee Jeremy Graham. We are allowed to meet virtually according to the original executive order entered or signed by Governor Pritzker. He extended that last Friday, I believe now through April 6th, extended the declaration of disaster. So that extended the Open Meetings Act, which allows for us to meet virtually. We do have to remember that all votes need to be by roll call. And with that, we can move on to any conflict of interest, any conflict. Okay, hearing no conflicts, do we have any changes in the agenda? Okay, if there's no changes in the agenda, a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Mike McKinnon will move to approve the agenda.
Jeremy Graham will second that motion.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kine, Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan. Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. If we can have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mike McKinnon would like to remove the minutes out of the consent agenda for correction.
All right, so the minutes of February 8th, 2021 from the regular board meeting will be removed from the consent agenda. Any other items to be removed?
So Mike McKinnon will move to
Okay.
approve the consent agenda minus the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Jeremy Graham will second that.
All right. Let's have a roll call to approve all the items aside from item A.
Mr. Kine, Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan. Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take up item 8A, which is the approval of minutes from February 8, 2021.
Okay, page 3, line item E2, the third line down, the sentence reads cost to regular customs. I believe that's supposed to be cost to regular customers.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. It should be.
Any
I didn't catch
any
it.
other changes?
That's all I saw.
All right. So if that's the only change, then if we'd have a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Mike McKinnon will make that motion.
Jeremy Graham will second that motion.
There's no discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan. Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kine.
All right, that's
Sorry.
approved. Oh, sorry.
Real quick, I would like to note that Stephanie King has joined the meeting as well.
And we have nobody signed up for public comment. So let's move on to the committees, Public Works.
Okay, first item is our, more details can be found in the Public Works minutes from last Monday, which are included in the packet. Item number 2 is salt purchase, and we have a recommendation by committee for board approval of salt purchase not to exceed $10,000 from account number 01-42-514.
All right, since that's coming from committee, we do not need a second. So any discussion regarding this motion? All right, hearing no discussion, roll call, please.
McKinnon,
Yes?
Ms. Morgan? Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kine, Mr. Malagranda.
Yes.
All right, that's approved.
Okay, the next item presented by Public Works for the benefit of the entire village is we do have a recommendation by committee for board approval of expenses not to exceed $12,000 for the installation of a natural gas powered generator. And that would be split equally between accounts numbers 01-41-611, account 01-43-831, and account 51-44-820.
Is that coming from committee, Mike? I wasn't sure if
That
I
is
heard.
coming from committee.
All right, thank you. So again, we do not need a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, roll call, please.
Frank, sorry, I couldn't get to my mute button fast enough because I'm going between two browsers here.
That's okay.
Does finance remember, what did we budget for the generator? I thought it was closer to 10, or did we budget 12?
It was 12 or it's correct.
It is
We went over this.
4,000. We budgeted 4,000 from 3 different groups that would benefit: the police, admin, and O&M.
Okay, thanks. I had 10 in my head for some reason and I couldn't get my hands on the budget quick enough. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Ms. Morgan? Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Kine, Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes?
All right. That's approved. We can go on to the next item.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is WinGIS. Attorney Gaziano brought up to the Public Works Committee as well as the Community Development Committees that in her efforts to try to resolve some of the issues with Highlands Development, she thought that if we could better utilize the funds that we are paying to WinGIS, that some of the things she tried to dig up might be much easier, and we probably need to revisit exactly what this system can do for us and probably get some rudimentary training. Since that occurred, Kelly, Sally Bennett, and myself participated in a Zoom meeting today with the folks at WinGIS, trying for them to give us some insight on some of the things the system could do. And certainly one of the areas that Kelly and Sally had put up for them for discussion was utilizing the WinGIS system as kind of a depository that we might be able to track our permits and so forth with it, which I think would be an excellent idea. 3 other areas that probably would be on the short list of things we might want to consider in addition to the permits would be code enforcement activities. And certainly if Public Works could get the water main system as well as the fire hydrants on there, all document and so forth, that we provide the opportunity if there is ever a water main break or something where a boil order has got to be issued or something like that. If all that stuff was loaded in the system, we could quickly retrieve customers that would be affected by those areas, as well as contact information, which certainly would expedite our ability to get in contact with them. So I would certainly concur with Attorney Gaziano's insight that we probably have funds that we're paying for that we're not correctly utilizing, and we probably need to dig in, on some of this stuff sooner rather than later. Our time in the beginning mainly is going to be trying to identify what our requirements would be, and then also trying to provide WinGIS some of the information that they would need to log and build a system around. But I certainly think that, as Kelly and Sally suggested, that we certainly would get going on possibly the permit and code enforcement, which probably could be the same system. And then maybe a little further down the line, depending on when Chad's time would allow or whatever, and probably also working through Fair Graham of seeing if we couldn't get some of the existing drawings that are in the system for water mains and hydrants and so forth uploaded into that system. So again, it was a very worthwhile 35, 40 minutes today of just getting a little bit of an understanding of what that system could do, and I think there's a lot of value to be obtained from it.
Mike, this is Frank Eubank. When we had our meeting with WinGIS probably a month or so ago, some of the things that I noticed when talking to them and I brought up is we're the only municipality that does not have any zoning in WinGIS. Every other municipality has their zoning up on WinGIS. So it would be helpful to do that for just anybody that needs to know the zoning information. The other things that we could put on there would be recapture fees. Same thing with our RWRD, payments that have already been made. We can put all of that on there. Plus, our police department can utilize the WinGIS system to track accidents. They can figure out a radius. If we're looking at sending out information to property owners, Mary can log into it and see who's 250 feet away from a particular property. So there's a lot of other items that we can use it for above and beyond what you just mentioned. So I really do think that every single department, every single committee can take advantage of WinGIS and utilize it for their needs.
Yeah, my recommendation probably would be is some of the things you mentioned, some of the things that I mentioned is probably one of your upcoming administrative meetings. Try to figure out which first task would benefit the village the most, because obviously you can't take on 6 or 7 of them at one time, but kind of get a priority list or whatever, and let's kind of hit them and get one started that and I think that'll the tip of the iceberg. Once we start getting into this thing and recognizing what it could be, it'll make all of our jobs a lot easier.
I agree. All right.
So
Anything else
for Public Works?
All right. Thank you, Mike. Move on to village engineer.
So I won't steal Mary's thunder with the Highlands development, but
Go right ahead.
I was just going to say we put together a very simple exhibit, just kind of identifying the properties that were acquired by the village to kind of help us as we in the coming months as we look at what lots will need to be served and platted and kind of putting together a plan on how we get other developers on board and things like that. So we got that created, and I actually just before the meeting sent the most recent version of the map out to Frank and Mary and Chad. So, and then also just a really brief update on the Elida Street project that is currently out for bid. Everything was approved as far as the design by IDOT, and so we're out for bid, and we're anticipating having bidding results prior to the next meeting for action.
All right. Well, thanks for the good news, Seth. Move on to community development.
Well, Mr. Kimes is not here. I will do my best effort to try to fill in the holes on this. I know Kelly sent a message out that she went through the recording of the meeting and tried to capture some minutes on there. I haven't seen those yet, so can't really comment on those. I do recall from our meeting last week that Mr. Mannheim did not have anything to report out on for code enforcement activities. Probably the greatest amount of time that was discussed in the meeting, and we were kind of spinning our wheels more than anything, is trying to figure out a direction on the business sign. Obviously, at this point, nobody's really taken overall ownership of it. I guess it did surface in our meeting, and Kelly, if you happen to have an opportunity to take a look, but apparently there may be a folder somewhere that's got some of the history of information from the gentleman, Mr. Reel, that was what was done in the past and how that was handled, because technically the sign is on village property, yet it was all kind of coordinated through the businesses and the vendor, and who was responsible for what and so forth. We got to kind of clarify those roles and responsibilities. Obviously, this was a consensus of the trustees that this is really a business venture, coordinated possibly through the chamber and also involving the vendor. However, being that it is on village property, the village has a role in there that we've got to figure out as far as repair and maintenance of the sign and so forth, or when there's changes and so forth. We got to kind of get those roles and responsibilities figured out. Also, Denise, help me pronounce her name,
Sparacino. Yeah.
Okay. She has reached out to a couple electricians to try to get some bids on some solar lighting or whatever to get those lights illuminated. Obviously, once those bids are received, you have to determine where the responsibility lies for the funding of that, as well as the coordination with it. Again, being that it's on village property, we're going to have to be involved down there to determine what we're going to allow, what we're not going to allow, and also type of service or maintenance agreements, so that way we know when a vendor is coming on the property, and and where Public Works has got to be engaged, which is our likely source to work with them. So we got a lot to figure out on there. So hopefully some of those quotes will come back, and possibly an invite could be extended to the apparent preferred vendor, so we can try to hammer some of these things out. So unless anybody else has any other questions or comments to add on that particular segment. We also talked a bit about the desire for the 4th of July fireworks, and obviously it's a very difficult decision, not knowing where the state will be. And I guess do we happen to know where our absolute drop dead date is on making a decision for that?
April 1st. I did speak with Wynn last Friday. He called and said he needs to know by April 1st.
So we did not render an opinion at the community development meeting. Obviously, it was the preference of all involved that we would certainly like to see them, but we did not carry a vote. But the consensus of the committee did seem to go in the direction that we didn't see that we could make a positive vote forward of moving forward if there was not a light that showed that the state of Illinois would open things up, and being a government entity that we would have to follow suit. So I guess no decision was made, but I guess to start the conversation, I'm prepared to make a motion that we do not move forward with fireworks for 2021.
Does anybody want to make a second?
We need a second before we can discuss anyway, correct?
Correct.
Okay, then Jeremy Graham will second that motion.
Okay, any discussion?
Frank, I think last year we could sign the contract and then bump it out 6 months or something like that. I'm assuming that's doable again.
Yeah, that should be the same terms.
I mean, I know it's tough, and I know we have to follow the rules. I know the CDC came out today and said for the first time that people that have been vaccinated can now remove their masks and be with other people that were vaccinated. So we're making progress. But by September, will we all be there? I don't know. I mean, is there some middle ground we can find at all if we had to push it back, and if we could structure it where people could gather? I don't know. All I know is that, I mean, people want to do this. I'm not talking necessarily Winnebago fireworks, but anecdotally, I'm sure we all have a dozen stories of people that are getting on planes and chucking it all and just wanting to do something. But I understand we have to follow the state mandates, but they change so quickly. Problem is with an April 1st deadline, that doesn't leave us a whole lot of time.
And that's kind of where I'm at. My personal opinion is I want them. My opinion as a trustee at this point in time, when we're on the cusp of making a decision by April 1st, and we're not gathering back together again, and is there any reasonable opportunity of a significant change between now and April 1st? And if the guidelines of the state are no by April 1st, I know what my decision is. The alternative would be, is there some other time, as you indicate, maybe by the end of the summer, that, okay, it's the Labor Day festival of fireworks rather than the 4th of July?
Right.
Yeah, and that would be my thinking as well. As we could have the fireworks, I believe, for $12,000 if it was on July 3rd or any other day other than July 4th. So I would recommend that we do have fireworks scheduled for July 3rd. It's a Saturday night. If for some reason the state still has a mandate that you can only have 50 or 100 or however many people gather, then we follow that. But at some point, if the state says you can have people, but they have to be 6 feet apart or families 6 feet apart, we can do that. I mean, we can have the stands open at the school. We can ask the school if we can have people sit in the seats and be distanced. I saw this watching some Cubs preseason games or spring training games. They have circles out in the grass, and they have it to where families are sitting in these circles and they're 6 feet apart. So you can set it up to where people are not right on top of each other. And if we can't do it on July 3rd, we have, I believe, it's 6 months to have something. So maybe by September or October. If for some reason we can't have more than 100 people or whatever the amount is by that time, we can still have a fireworks show. We just have people go out to their lawns, go to different places, but they just can't gather in large groups. They can gather in groups of 100 or whatever the amount's going to be, but just not more than that. So, I don't think we should have a family fest. I don't think we should say we're going to have a parade, but I do think we should have it planned for fireworks, because if we have the opportunity to have fireworks and we don't, people I think are going to be a little more upset than if we have the fireworks planned and we can't, then we can delay it at least.
I guess the only other comment I'll make is, if the comments die down, we're getting ready to vote on this, that because I stated it in a negative way, if the group wants to create an opportunity to go forward with fireworks, then they would vote no
Correct.
on the motion.
Correct. Any other discussion regarding the current motion? All right, if there's no more discussion, and I'm not seeing anybody motioning, those that I can see, to try and say something. So if there's no more discussion, roll call, please.
Mrs. O'Rourke,
No.
Mr. Graham,
No.
Mr. Kine, Mr. Malagranda,
No.
Mr. McKinnon,
No.
Ms. Morgan. No.
Okay, so that did not pass.
I will make a new motion I make a motion that we schedule the fireworks for July the 3rd at the reduced amount. And if we have to push that back and we've got a 6-month time to use them and we are not able to move forward on July the 3rd, then we will schedule something at a later date.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Julie.
All right, Mrs. O'Rourke.
I have
Any
a question.
discussion?
This 6 months is from the today or July 3rd or when?
It's from July 3rd. That's my understanding, is if you don't use it on that date, you have so many months to use them. And I can't remember if it's 3 months, 6 months, but I know we'd have to do it before the end of the calendar year.
And is this motion contingent on that flexibility being available this year in the contract?
Yes.
Any other discussion? We have money in the budget, I believe, for fireworks. And we also have Stephanie King here that is interested in knowing what type of goal that the committee is being asked to achieve to get donations from business members and other contributors. So I don't know if we have a goal in mind. Obviously, 100% of the 12,000 would be nice, but I just want to ask finance, do we have a certain amount that we've already put aside in case we don't get enough donations?
Shouldn't we vote on this motion first?
I think it's part of the motion though, because I think we need to know the finance part of this
Okay.
I
matter.
believe at the February community development meeting, we were discussing a desire that the committee, the 4th of July committee, would be able to come up with $5,000.
Okay.
This is on top of what they already have?
Well, I think, whatever they had collected previously with, and then we would hopefully it could be added to it through various fundraisers with the desire to hopefully come up with about 5,000.
Okay.
I thought we just budgeted 5. Go ahead, Sally.
I believe that the number is 15,000, not 12,000. At least that's what we were pitched last year.
Oh, okay, that's my mistake
And
then.
if we had it on the 4th, it would be 20.
Right.
So in the budget, we have a potential transfer from community development for 15,000, and then an expectation that there would be 5,000 from donations and other support.
So we currently have enough in our budget to cover the full 15,000, but if we get contribution from 4th of July committee, then it obviously is less for us to contribute as a village. So, okay. All right.
Our
Any other?
biggest,
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, our biggest concern as the committee was how do we forge forward with fundraising? Kind of everybody's still hurting very much. And yes, we can get creative and we can try and raise as much as we can. But doing so without the guarantee of the fireworks on the 4th is going to be challenging. So, I mean, even with the possibility of fireworks on the 3rd, having to let our donors know that if, things haven't changed, that it may not happen for, some time.
Right. And I guess, Stephanie, the message would be we plan to have it on July 3rd unless the state of Illinois does not allow gatherings above, 50 or 100 or whatever the amount is. Then we would look at extending the date for the fireworks, but we will have a fireworks show sometime this calendar year.
Okay. Thank you.
And I respect what Stephanie's offering because we did talk quite a bit about that in the community development. And, hence that was why my initial motion was it is, because it's really hard to motivate the troops to go out and dig in when there's an uncertain finish, so.
Yeah.
Now, if the intent is that we're gonna have the fireworks show regardless, whether or not we can meet together and, we just tell everyone to go outside because, this guy's pretty big and you can see it anywhere. Why would we not just have it on the 3rd either way?
Well, the idea would be if you don't have it on the 3rd because you can't meet, we're hoping, as Julie was saying, that as more people get vaccinated, that maybe by August or September, we are allowed to get together, because that's the next phase. Phase 5 is we have a majority or there's a certain percentage of people that have been vaccinated or we have herd immunity. And once we get to that level, then the governor has said we're back to where we were before COVID hit. And I have not seen the metrics to know what that number is for number of people vaccinated, but I know that is how we get to the next level, is a number of people being vaccinated and that herd immunity. That's the language that's in phase 5.
And I guess
Okay.
that's why I'm recommending the 3rd of, as opposed to the 4th of July, with a high degree of uncertainty of this coming off on the 4th. Why would we want to commit to the higher dollar amount and then have to put it on an off day and still have spent that higher dollar amount? And
Right.
with the 4th of July actually falling on a Sunday this year, granted the Monday would probably be the recognized holiday, but you know, in this particular situation, although I would prefer it to be on the 4th, you know, being on the 3rd before a Sunday may not be a bad option. And if we do have to defer it to a later date, at least we didn't pay the premium and have it on an off day after all.
And maybe we should verify that Labor Day weekend is a viable alternative in case for some reason that's not an option. Because to me, that would be, to Stephanie's point, you know, the 3rd of July or Labor Day weekend would probably be more lucrative for the businesses to have people come out, even if they're parked, you know, they're not sitting out there.
Yeah.
Hopefully making it a little bit of an easier sell.
And again, we can also frame it around a Winnebago fireworks, and you know, be a little silent on the day and just put on the little bit smaller print that the initial target date is, you know, July the 3rd, and if we have to have a fallback day, we're looking for, you know, maybe the Sunday night before, or Saturday night, Sunday night, or whatever the better day would be for Labor Day.
This is Jeff White. Just to put that out, Jeremy, kind of answer your question. I think if you set the date on July 3rd, regardless of what the restrictions are through the state, you're going to have people congregating no matter what. If you have put on a fireworks show and the restrictions are still standing there as we are today, as far as the amount of people and distancing and stuff like that, I think people are going to come out and probably violate that anyway. So that could be a mess bigger than what we want to deal with.
Fair. That's fair. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
And Frank, I can tell you, I looked it up and they haven't figured out for Illinois what herd immunity is going to be yet.
Okay.
They just indicated that for measles, it was about 90%, so they think at least 80%. And I know for what Trustee O'Rourke was talking about, the federal guidelines, they had also indicated that I think 9% of the people so far have been vaccinated. So we got a ways to go.
Okay.
That wasn't Illinois, that was countrywide.
Any other discussion?
Well, Jeff, are you saying that we're not going to be able to police this if we try it and we don't have those rules in place? I think that's kind of what I'm hearing.
And there will be no way to do that. In fact, trying to enforce that would be like trying to enforce the masking for businesses as well. That's basically been put on the health department to do that. But I mean, in society the way it is right now, would people go out to these things and wear a mask? Yes, possibly. Would some of them say, well, they're having these fireworks, we don't need to wear them? That's possible too. But to try and keep people away from each other 6 feet by family might be more of a stretch than what we can deal with for the police force. We're not going to know who's with who, and trying to I mean, if you specify a date and those restrictions haven't been lifted, that's going to be an issue. I mean, we won't be able to enforce it to the fact that there is no way to enforce it as far as a ordinance or a criminal statute. But could you have tempers flare? You're not 6 feet away from my family, get away. Yeah, you could have that.
I think the intent is if the restrictions have not been lifted, we would defer to a later date.
But I'm just thinking, what if they're not lifted in September?
I got you. Okay. Yeah.
But then,
I mean,
I would go by the idea that Jeremy had, were to have it on the 3rd regardless. That's what I was looking at. The September date wasn't in my thought, but it's going to be the same for September as well. As somebody had mentioned, the CDC has already lifted restrictions for people to spend time with other people that have been vaccinated. But how do you tell who's been vaccinated, who's not? Do you put a sign on your forehead saying I've been vaccinated? You know, then you know who you can hang around with and who you can't.
And even if you're vaccinated, it doesn't mean that you can't get COVID. It just means you have a better chance to not have it. So, um, but one of the things that can be done as well is if you're concerned about masses of people going to the site and they're going to be unruly and they're not going to abide by social distancing, you move the site. You don't tell them where the site's going to be. You just tell them that that there will be fireworks that'll be in the sky and they can look in the sky. I mean, seriously, you don't have to tell them they're going to be behind the school when they're actually going to be behind the public works garage where we used to have them 30 years ago. You can be creative in where you actually set them off. And then that way people who want to see them, you just don't disclose the site so they don't know where to go.
But I think I think historically you're going to have people congregate up there by the school just as that's where it's always been. That's where they figure it's where we're going to be. That's probably where they're going to go. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm trying to play
Right.
devil's advocate here.
But you can't, I mean, and so am I. I'm trying to find, what alternatives can you have to try and go against that. And, the thing is we need to wait to see what happens in June and early July. If we can have the fireworks, great. If we can't, then we wait to see what's going to happen. If we know that we're not going to be different than where we are now with social distancing and wearing masks when it comes up to September, then we put our thinking caps on and figure out, okay, where are we going to have the fireworks? How do we limit the number of people? We can work on that as we get there. I don't think we need to do that tonight, but we can think about that as we approach if we have to do that.
Then if we have to delay it till December, the trees have lost their leaves and more people can see them.
There you go.
I guess in the worst case scenario is when we roll the dice and we're out the money. But again, at least hopefully the public will see we tried to do the best we could with the circumstances we had to operate, and we took the risk, and hopefully it pays off or we write it off.
Yep.
Sally, are you the one this is Stan, were you the one that talked to Melrose?
Kelly.
Yes, Kelly.
Sally. Oh, Kelly?
Yes.
Kelly.
And so did you ask them what possibility Rockford is doing if they have a April deadline?
I did not ask them about Rockford. All he said was that they need to know by April 1st, and the pricing would be the same as previous year.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
my question to him would be, if we're concerned about people gathering, and oftentimes that includes the ground show, and that would be one reason why the people would want to be near, could we ask him if it could just all be air and not necessarily a ground show that people would be concerned about missing? Because I know part of their cost is air show plus ground show, right?
Makes sense to me.
Because if we specify it to be all air, then people wouldn't necessarily have to be as close to see.
Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you could follow up with that, first to verify the cost for a non-4th of July, and then to verify that, what you're asking, if we can have it specified, that would be good too.
Okay.
And then Kelly,
I would ask the question too, whether or not that's going to change the cost.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. If it would change the length of the time that the fireworks would actually, that they could enjoy, and how it would impact the cost.
and then since you're asking them questions, Kelly, just to make sure that Labor Day weekend would be a viable alternative. Just you'd hate to have that one crossed off for whatever reason from their standpoint, their schedule. So if we could just ask that as well, because I think that would be a nice alternative. If not necessarily we'd be stuck with that one either, but it's nice to know if we have that option.
Okay, yes, certainly.
Thanks.
I see we lost Frank.
We did. No, you're not.
We didn't? I don't see him. He disappeared.
Yeah, he dropped down.
Yeah, he
I don't-
fell out. I don't know what happened, but I'm sure he'll try and get back in.
Okay.
So if these questions are going to be asked, do we need to postpone this motion then?
I don't know that we need to postpone the motion because I would think that once those questions are answered, well, obviously, yes, if all of a sudden Labor Day is not a viable alternative, that might require a change. If we're able to get an air show only at a lesser cost, I don't think that particular one changes because I think as long as we know our costs are not going up, they're where they're at or lower. But the issue on the ability to have it on the Labor Day weekend, which I don't know a whole lot of fireworks going on over Labor Day, so I wouldn't expect that would change it.
Well, and also Sally Huggins and I were talking earlier today because we're going to need to have a special board meeting before the end of the month, brief as it may be, because the matter of the appropriation ordinance is not on the agenda. That normally would come from finance. So in any event, we're going to have to do that anyway. So once she finds out those answers, you could possibly cover that at that same time.
Exactly.
Okay, if we're gathering anyway, and then we know we got till April 1st, and maybe we can table this and quickly take it up then with having the answers to those questions.
I just wanted to add really quick too that if Labor Day is not an option, we could also look at 9/11 as a possible date to, have the fireworks. Just to put it out there.
Well, thank you for the recommendation.
I think we're getting Frank back.
He was getting his computer back set up again.
Okay.
So I guess the question is then if we need to, and that this will come up with the future meeting dates when we need to do our special board meeting, how do we go about, what is the correct verbiage to table this motion until the special board meeting? Is that the correct verbiage there?
Right. We can do that.
Does that come under a motion?
Don't we have to have a motion to do that?
We do, but I thought we
Yeah.
were waiting for Frank.
He's coming. You want to try to come out here? You want to switch? You want to switch us? Okay.
All right, I'm trying to log in with the new Chromebook that we ordered. I'm testing it out to see how we like it, and so far I'm not liking it. It's not letting me stay on the go-to meeting, so it's not going to be effective for us. I understand from the conversation, because I've been here in the office, that the pending motion, there's been a motion, we need a motion to lay it over to the next meeting, whether it's a special meeting or a board meeting. So if somebody would like to make a motion to lay it over to the next meeting.
Jeremy Graham will make that motion.
So Jeremy made the motion.
Mike McKinnon will second.
Mike McKinnon with the second. Any discussion on that motion to lay it over?
Well, it would have to be laid over to our other meeting before the end of the month, right?
Correct, because both of them have to be completed before April 1st.
So it'll be laid over to the special board meeting that'll occur prior to April 1st. Thank you, Julie, for that clarification. Any discussion? All right, if there's no discussion, roll call, please.
Mr. Kimes, Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan? Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
All right, that's approved.
Okay, the next item on there is again, we did not render a decision in community development, but we did toss around the issue of the garage sales for 2021. And it was kind of the opinion of the committee that, again, the same type of situation, it's hard to take a village endorsement of an activity which may run counter to the direction from the state government. I believe the way we did it last year is we certainly allowed the individuals to take care of their own garage sales, but it wasn't an active involvement by the village. short of, I think in past years, other than helping set the date and maybe do a little bit of advertisement for that, would we follow a comparable path this year, or do we need to just kind of take a back seat and just allow it to occur? Let individual residents do what they're looking to do, and the village is going to take a back seat in it.
I think we're going to have to take a back seat in it. This is my recommendation here. We have to take a back seat in it until we hear anything otherwise as an official government.
Well, but I think the thing about it is even last year, the residents are free to do it. It just can't be we can't arrange things like a hot dog stand and stuff like that. We've done it in the past. So other than maybe an involvement on narrowing down a date, and then if something comes up later, then we may be able to get a little bit more of an endorsement to support it. But Mary, do you recall a little bit more of the conversation that took place last week? I'm a little bit of a miss from where we were at with that.
I think you pretty accurately described where we are. I mean, it's just that the village, people would like it to be village organized or village publicity, but we talked about that it would probably be best just to do it like last year where people could still do it, but it's not something that the village is actually sanctioning or coordinating.
And if we get a changing of direction from the state, we can, kick it into gear and do whatever we can to help support it at that point in time.
When are those usually held? I can't remember.
Pardon?
When is that usually held?
June, I believe.
Like the week right after school gets out.
Like middle of June?
Yeah, and I think what they always try, apparently what did come up in conversation last week is they tried to avoid whatever the date was at Westlake for their garage sales. We tried to make sure we didn't conflict with that, and typically it's been 1 week following that. So
No, you're right. I don't think we can do any more than we did last year for sure.
yeah. Frank, your microphone's showing mute even though we see you. Can you nod your head if you hear?
I went ahead and put it down because I was making some noise in here.
So any opinion from your direction? I think the recommendation, it really wasn't taken on a vote, but the consensus of community development last week relative to the garage sales was kind of take a path similar to last year. We are aware of it, it's going on, but until such time the state gives us a little bit more opportunity that, we can't take an active role in it.
Correct. That's my thought. We have to be the same as we were last year. It's the same situation.
Okay. And the last item that is on the agenda, I'm going to have to take a pass on this because I don't know, it did not get discussed last week at community development. I don't know anything about it unless somebody else is aware of whatever the conversation was going to be. Sally's got her hand up.
I had an impromptu conversation with Don regarding Memorial Park and the need to upgrade the playground equipment. We discussed possible funding as being fireworks money that wouldn't be spent. Last year we didn't spend it, and potentially in 2021, but that was really as far as the conversation went. He was going to think about it and talk about it at the meeting tonight.
Well, I think since we will probably be rendering a decision, maybe at a special board meeting, that we will just table this item and bring it up at next month's community development meeting. So that will take care of the items for community development.
And can I just ask about the garage sales? Is that to be considered then a consensus of the board, just in case the public asks? Because there wasn't a vote on whether to do what we did last year or do something different.
Is anybody opposed to not having the garage sales as a village-wide garage sale?
now?
Silence means that you agree with what we did last year.
If we want to formalize it, I would make a motion that we take a parallel path of what we did in 2020.
That's fine. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jeremy
you.
Graham will second that.
Any discussion? Okay, if no discussion, roll call.
Just a minute. No writing.
That's okay.
Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan? Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kynes.
All right, so that's approved. All right, village attorney.
Okay, before I get into the items that are under me, I just wanted to let you know that, as Seth mentioned, he has prepared a map that shows the 34.9 acres acquired. We had asked to get something together for when we have discussion. So it hadn't gone out to everybody yet, and that was the only reason for that. Was I had asked Seth if he could add a couple of things, and that namely was kind of what the surrounding properties are. Maybe everybody knows, but I think it's just easier when you got a map and you can see what the other properties are. So I know Kelly was included in that, so I would ask if maybe she could get a copy of that email from Seth, his latest one today, to everyone who's part of the board packet, just so you have a sense of what property is being acquired. Also, I go to the next court date for formal dismissal of the lawsuit is on this coming Thursday. However, I can tell you that it's up in the air as to whether or not it will actually happen that day, because what I'm waiting for is the original of the deed. Everything else, all the settlement agreement and the recapture fee information, we have provision for all of that, telefax or electronic signatures are fine. However, with the deed, you have to have the actual wet signature. So naturally, I don't want to dismiss the lawsuit until we have the actual deed in hand that can be recorded. I know I've been in contact with Attorney Art Keelty that his client was mailing it, but when he mailed it, he didn't mail it by express mail, as far as we know. So we're waiting on that. But the document, as you saw, you got a copy of the signed document, but it was just a copy because it came electronically. So with that having been said, if we have to, we'll just get a short date set over for the actual formal dismissal of the lawsuit. So then we got a few resolutions having to do with the Mantle Development property. The first one is for the village to purchase additional title insurance on the property that's acquired from Mantle Development Group. First of all, Trustee McKinnon, and I know he forewarned me at the beginning of the meeting that he's got some more, but there was a typographical error in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th whereas, that it should say on the second line, fees and copy charges, not FIA and copy charges. But the gist of this particular resolution is that title insurance, as you probably are all well aware, is to ensure good legal title to the property for these 34.9 acres that we're acquiring, to make sure that there aren't any problems with it. I can tell you that having dealt with this for so many years and looking at every deed that ever came about with this property, it doesn't seem like there are any problems, but obviously I'm not a title company and I'm not a title insurer. So we had said that we wanted a title policy from Mantle Development Group, and our Keelty had originally come back with $30,000 saying, well, that's double the value of what the tax or the sold taxes were. And obviously that wasn't a sufficient amount. So what I had done is I did some calculations and had discussion with Frank over, okay, what are we going to use for some comparable property? So I took what unplatted land from the church sold for per acre, took what the platted land of the athletic edge sold for, looked at what was potentially what a lot would sell for that was for a condo, and I came up with about $700,000 in title insurance and got them up to $250,000. which is the bulk of what the bill will be, $1,068 because you pay a base fee, and they have then the research fee and all of that. So as you add on more and more, it does not exponentially increase. So basically, I'm suggesting that we do the extra 450,000 because they're doing 250 to make it get to 700,000, and that'll cost the village $450,000. I had inquired because I kind of wanted to.
It'll cost us $450, Mary.
$450 for 450,000 of insurance.
That's like, wait a
And yeah, that would be a little different now, wouldn't it? So I did originally inquire as to whether or not we could just do it separately so that it would be, this is what Mantle gave us, and then here we've upped our policy, but you have to do it in one transaction, and if you don't, you start back at square one in terms of cost. So we didn't want to do that. So that's what this resolution would cover, that the village would pay for an additional $450,000 of title insurance for the $450 extra premium.
So we'll need a motion to adopt this resolution.
2021-04R.
Mike McKinnon will make the motion to adopt the resolution.
Lori Morgan will second.
All right, thank you, Lori. We've got a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call, please.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kynes, Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
All right, that's approved.
Okay, and I had gotten the originals of these resolutions to Sally, so you know, the originals of the resolutions and the ordinance and the cover sheets and all of that to Frank. So for any of these that have corrections, I'll likewise get them to him, because I know you like it on the bond paper. And then we can get it to you for Frank for signature, and then your signature and markings. Okay, the next thing is the resolution affirming the entitlement to recapture fees. This is a document that I drafted that basically, you're probably aware that Mantle Development had a recapture agreement with the village when they originally did some work, because they did put some money into the infrastructure, just not everything that they were supposed to do. They paid 500, just to give you a sense of it, they paid 500,000 for the land. And I think that their loan from the bank was about 1.8 million. So they did obviously do some infrastructure stuff, just not everything. So they were entitled then to a recapture fee agreement on certain properties. And as I got to thinking about it, I was like, well, there's no way we want them to come back for any recapture fees. Those should come and be assigned to the village, including the ones for Crossroads Church, because as I mentioned in a prior email, Crossroads Church had paid about $12,000 some in recapture fees, and we did not pay them over to Mantle Development Group. Basically told them that when we get the lawsuit dealt with, we'll talk to you. So basically, the village will be able to keep those, as well as any other recapture fees that come in the future. As I explained in the email, it doesn't mean the village has that money tomorrow, but there is a substantial amount of land that, should they come and develop, then that would be recapture fees to which the village would be entitled. And we're trying to do a lot more things by resolution, just so we have it that's more readily available and easy for people to find, because when you go and look in what resolution numbers are and what titles are, it's just easier for people to find them. So that's the gist of this particular document.
And do we have someone that would make a motion to adopt this resolution? And Sally, what would be the number?
2021-05R.
Thank you.
Julia, make the motion.
Mike McKinnon will second.
All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Kime? Mr. Malagranda?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
All right, that's approved.
Okay, the next one, again pertaining to Mantle, is just a formal resolution to accept the Mantle Development Group Settlement and Release Agreement. This was one that we had voted at a prior board meeting that it would be sent to everyone and they would have a certain time period for commentary. And I did hear and made the correction. There was one correction Trustee O'Rourke had pointed out, which we did that. But you had previously authorized Frank as the village president to sign that document once you had a chance to review it in 5 days for commentary. And so, but I just wanted something formal to say that you're formally accepting this settlement and release agreement that has been signed by Alan Tanner on behalf of Mantle Development Group and also by Frank Eubank on behalf of the village.
All right, do we have a motion to adopt this resolution?
2021-06R.
Thank you.
Dan
Jeremy
Malagranda
Graham will
makes
make
that
it.
motion.
Dan Malagranda made the motion. I believe Jeremy Graham then. Do you want to make the second, Jeremy?
Sure.
All right. Any discussion? Not hearing any, roll call, please.
Mrs. O'Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Kime? Mr. Malagranda?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
All right, that's approved.
Okay, then the ordinance amending the UDO regarding a special use permit for storage facility mini warehouses under District Number 3 General Business. This had been discussed at the zoning board, and there's had been a public hearing over this matter. And basically, we currently, under the Unified Development Ordinance, self-storage warehouse and mini warehouse is in just the RTMP, the Research Technology and Manufacturing Park. But this would allow it to be in a general business district as well. And I see I was having a brain drain when I did the attachments because I indicated the page was, I was trying to give you a copy of what the page was going to look like with the change. And I put that it was revised March of 2020. So of course I'll correct that to March of 2021. I was frustrated because I could not make it look pretty the way I was trying to because it kept changing more than I wanted. But in any event, that's what the purpose of this ordinance would be, is to, for the general business district, District Number 3, that it would add the self-storage and mini warehouse as a special permitted use under that District Number 3, which would then, general business, which would mean being a special permitted use, you would have control over whether to grant it for the first part, and then also what the terms and conditions would be. That's what's being presented to you.
Do we have a motion to adopt this ordinance?
2021-01.
Mike McKinnon will make that motion.
Jeremy Graham will second that motion.
Mary, can you
Any
take a look
discussion?
at Mary, can you take a look at your first whereas where it referenced ordinance 2019-14 and then Article 1 references 2019-04? Is one of those two in there?
Okay, I will check and see. I think it's 14.
Yeah, so Article 1, you may just have a typographical.
A typo, yeah. We'll check.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kimes, Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved.
Okay, and the last thing under me is the ordinance establishing service charges on the garbage pickup rates 2021 through 2027. This, I had circulated this to, I believe, Kelly previously had worked on it with Kelly and Sally Bennett, that in essence would codify or put in an ordinance what we needed to indicate as far as what the additional upcharge would be on the for the garbage pickup rates. And you'll see that if you look, we do this periodically, but I had to change the language because this year in the garbage contract, it changed how things would be determined, and it's based on the CPIU, and we didn't have index, which is for garbage and trash collection services. So that's why the wording is a little different, but it basically just shows what the service charge is going to be the quarter for the regular accounts, 10 cents for the senior citizens account. And again, it needs to be memorialized in the form of an ordinance, and then this ordinance gets recorded.
Mary, question on this one. I brought up in finance, we had talked about the service charges, the upcharges, and I thought we had talked about just doing that for 1 year until we did some work, and maybe we would change those going forward once we got our arms around our actual costs and so forth. But this thing kind of puts them in writing for 7 years. Can this pass as is and then be redone if we determine to go a different direction, or what's the easiest way to look at that?
That's what I think, and I know that we had discussed, or I think I was maybe with Sally Bennett about, okay, if we did it for 1 year, then you're definitely going to have to, we have to do it then every year, or unless the next year, then you do it for a period of time. But you certainly can always amend it. If you don't change, if it ends up that you don't change it, then you don't have to change this. But
okay.
I don't know, Sally, did you have anything additional to that? I'm just trying to remember the total content of our conversation about that.
I honestly don't remember having that conversation. But
and it might have been with Kelly Simons, but I don't know. I was talking with village staff about that whole idea of, was it going to be for that 1 year time period, or was it going to be for a longer period of time?
It makes sense, Mary, to have it go beyond 1 year, because if we forget to act on it, we would not have the ability to collect anything. So it's nice to have that. I guess the only concern, when Julie brought this up just now, I thought about it too. If we pass it the way it is, and we go 25 cents the first year and 10 cents each year thereafter, and we decide that really we need 35 cents or 45 cents or something more than 10 cents, is it going to look like we're gouging the residents because we put in their 10 cents for the next 6 years? So does it look worse to put in 25 cents and then 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 and come back and change it? Or is it better to just do 1 year at 25 or every year at 25? And then if we need to change it from 25, then we can take that change.
Yeah, I doubt anybody looks at these, to be honest, Frank. So I'm okay with as long as we can go back and amend it, because what we talked about in finance is we really are trying to get our more efficient practices, and one of those is more of a drive to online billing. And I get seniors and fixed income, but let's face it, there are check writers and they're taking the administrative burden, and people that don't do that are subsidizing, and it's a 25 cent versus 10 cents. I don't think anyone on fixed income is going to go broke over 15 cents. So in one sense, I'm saying they should all be at 25 cents and equalize it. But I'd like to get our arms around how much time we're spending on this, what it's costing us, and kind of run it like a business. I mean, are we, again, I think there's efficiencies to be gained. So maybe we're going to be just right back where we are. But I say let's pass it as is, and then we can amend it if need be. after we do some work. And you're right, if it slips to the back burner because there's more pressing issues, then at least we don't have to worry about not getting anything. So I'm okay with it. I just wanted to bring it up to see how easy that would be.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Well, we first have to have a motion, I believe. I think we didn't have a motion yet.
I will make a motion to approve the, what was it?
Ordinance
Ordinance? Yes.
establishing a service.
2021-02.
Thank you. Do we
I'll
have a
second it.
And
Julie.
who is-
Who seconded?
Julie, thank you. And now any discussion?
Who seconded?
Mrs. O'Rourke. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Times, Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
All right, that's approved.
That's it for me.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing for finance, nothing for police. We do have admin team clerk. A request for quote for health insurance for 2022. I believe this is for going out to ask, was this for a request for proposal?
I believe so.
Yes.
And on this one, we are looking to have I guess what I'm trying to think is, do we have a request for proposal that we're going to be putting together to send out and the time frame for doing that?
Are you guys talking about quotes or just working together? It says consortium on the agenda. Are you talking about having conversations with other area municipalities, or I'm confused on what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not sure what this is on the agenda. If it's, what we talked about before of looking at other agencies, whether it be the school district or other governmental entities, and see if we can aggregate with them, or if this is for us looking for somebody like Coyle Kiley or Lori Miller's business to represent us in doing that.
And are we looking to supersede what we already have, or are we looking to get something in line for, its termination of the current agreement? Because nobody's going to quote you any prices 10 months out.
Right.
The one thing that we do have coming up is our other insurance. I believe our disability and some of the other insurances are coming up. They're not on a calendar. They're not on the same schedule as the health insurance. So that we've had our current agent looking at quotes and trying to get information from our employees so they can get, I think standard insurance is the one that currently is bidded, and the rates are going up a large amount. So we're trying to see if we can get other ones to bid and then what that's going to be. But in terms of health insurance, I believe we were looking and talking about possibly having a request for proposal so that various companies could give their proposal to represent the village in trying to obtain health insurance bids for the 2022 calendar year. And so I guess it's on here to ask the trustees if you want to go out for a bid and put it out there and let our current representative and then any other ones submit the RFP or their response to the RFP and select one of them to represent us.
Typically, there's usually not a fee for that service. It's usually they're getting a commission off of the final insurance thing there. So, I mean, obviously, if we're not satisfied with the representation we've had previously, we might certainly want to be on the look to see if there's somebody who's going to represent us better. It's more going to be an intangible than it will be an economic one at this point, I would believe.
Right, and you're correct that we do not pay anything for the service, so it's not as though, we pay a certain amount and we have to go out to bid because we pay that certain amount. I just know that the employees were not happy with this last go round, and we were looking at possibly having somebody else provide that service to us, and just wanted to know your feelings as trustees, if you wanted the admin team to continue to look at that and come back with a suggestion, or how you want to handle that.
Can't we have more than one quoted up front when we get closer to the date?
Well, usually you cannot, because what will happen is whatever agent of record it is, so whatever insurance company we're represented by that's providing the insurance today, if we've already got a broker we're going through, we would have to make a reassignment to a new broker. But you can't get two brokers to quote the same insurance to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't believe the current broker has done a good job for us, then we would want to be seeking out another broker, and then we would give them the assignment of record for the existing company and as well as any additional bids.
So is that more what they're referring to when they're talking about RFP, do you think, Frank? Is let's meet some other insurance brokers and understand their level of service and what they can offer, and whether or not pooling together a consortium is even a viable opportunity?
Correct, and I think that in this discussion, what you and Mike have said, it makes sense to do it that way, to have our current agent come in and talk to us about that, what they think they can do for next year, how they can make things better, if they think we can group together with other entities, and then have the next one come in and have the same conversation, kind of like we're interviewing them.
Right.
And, so there are two that we would want to, and there might be a third one out there that we might want to call in just to get an idea. And then see what other services they provide, because I know that some of them will give us information during the year. They'll have meetings, allow us to come to the meetings, whereas other ones don't.
Right.
So I think, Julie, you've made, and Mike too, you've made a good suggestion. We'll reach out to the current provider, another one that we believe could represent us, and then the third one, and just set up times, and the admin team can meet with them individually and go from there.
Yeah, it's tricky when you're as small as we are, and that's why if you get a little bit more power by, doing some kind of consortium, but I don't even know if that's doable in an insurance field, to be honest. I just don't know.
Well, if we have three people that we talk to and all three say one way or the other, then we're pretty convinced that's going to be it. But if we get, three different answers, then we'll have to probably look into it more.
Yeah.
And probably one of the common questions that you might ask if you're talking to somebody is, what companies do they represent? And again, if there's some good, competent companies that the current one's not bringing forward, then that would be the opportunity to see, who else is out there.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you for your input. And I think we do have an admin team meeting coming up, so we can address it again at that time.
And you can usually Google RFPs, quite honestly, to get good questions to ask. I do that all the time. So
Sure.
I would definitely encourage you to do that.
Yep. We'll go ahead and do that. All right, so we'll go on to then number 2, which is recommendation for hire the administrative assistant. Number 1. And that one I don't know about, so if someone could lead that.
The problem is the current contract with First is for 500 hours. We have one of the admin people is going to reach that 500 hours on Monday.
And Monday?
Probably.
Okay.
We were at 464 hours last Thursday. She will work 30 hours this week. Tells me that next Monday she's going to hit her 500.
Well, typically we can't act before 500, but I would certainly say if we're approaching 500, then the appropriate people need to get together. And if we believe that, they've done a good job, then we don't want to wait because obviously they could become disenchanted.
Exactly.
We're looking at scheduling an admin team meeting. It would be Jeremy, Sally Joe. We'd have Kelly and Sally Bennett as well, because we want to have input as to the individual and how that individual is performing. We were looking at trying to schedule it the next couple of weeks. So what we could do is we could schedule that meeting and have it done before we have our actual special board meeting. And we could add this item to the special board meeting with a recommendation because, we can go an extra 2 or 3 weeks with first. And then if we get the recommendation from the admin team to hire this person, we can bring it to the special board meeting with the terms that we believe should be provided to this person.
But you do realize there is a cost for that,
What is the cost?
about $8 an hour.
You mean to go beyond 500 hours, Sally?
No, it is today. It'll
No, but
continue.
right, but you're just saying if we go over 500 hours, we're going to continue to pay that extra 8, whereas if we gave them an offer today, the $8 could be chopped off.
Yes.
Or it would be like as of Monday, yeah. It all depends on what we make the offer for, but $8 is a round number.
Well, it's not probably a pure $8 because if all of a sudden they go on benefits and other things, there's a somewhat of an offset. But I still think it's to our advantage if it's a viable candidate and we're looking to continue with them sooner rather than later.
I know the feedback I've heard has all been pretty positive, so.
Yeah, I have no complaints. I think we've had people outside of the village or people who have contacted the village had good things to say about this person. So if anybody wants to make a motion, that's fine. I'm okay with doing that. I just don't have a recommended amount that we start with. I believe
Sally,
the
I think you had some comments in finance today.
I'm on board for hiring this person. Kelly has more insight than me because I have been working from home, but all of my experience and everything that I've heard has been positive. So that's really all I have.
And I agree. She's taken initiative, works very well, has grasped the concepts, has understood and done very well in learning the processes, has a good attitude with the public and others, works well together as a team. So it's been good.
And what does she make now?
I confirmed that with First today. She is paid from First at $15.50 per hour.
What do we Mike, you have some familiarity with temporary services, don't you? I mean, do you normally pay them that going forward, or do you give them a bump?
Usually it's probably going to be a little bit over what they've had. I mean, obviously the big benefit to them when they've gone from temporary to permanent employment is they have a permanent job and benefits and everything start kicking in. So that alone is usually enough to clear the hurdle. But I think even as we and again, since this is kind of new territory for us, going this route, we probably do want to think our way through, because typically when we have somebody that completes a probationary period, then we would make that adjustment. So if we've gone through somebody on a temporary basis, the fact we're making a decision to bring them from temporary to permanent, is that kind of going to be their probationary period, or are we it would seem to me if we've gone through a probationary period on a temporary to permanent assignment, I don't think I'd want to put them on another probationary period.
Right.
The other thing, Mike, is the only benefit this person will get is vacation. Part-time do not get sick leave and part-time do not get insurance.
I stand corrected. I forgot that we were talking about a part-time job.
And also IMRF, I'm sorry, they do get IMRF.
Yep, my mistake.
Oh.
I was failed to realize we're talking part-time. So yeah, I would think that to me, this serves as the, probationary period, and, probably we would probably make a smaller, an adjustment going into the permanent employment.
Should we table this for the admin meeting and then bring it up for, if we do the admin meeting this week and then for our special board meeting in the next week or so, finalize?
Well, maybe I got another idea. I would probably say, I would make a motion that if after scrutiny by the admin team, if they are prepared to move forward with an offer of employment, that we offer that at an amount at $16 an hour.
Mike, do we have a second on that motion?
Jeremy Graham will make that second.
My thought is, from what we're hearing, everybody is in agreement that we should hire this person. So I don't think admin team needs to discuss that aspect. I think the only issue would be what is a fair amount of compensation. Really, that's all we have left to discuss. And we can do that tonight. I mean, if you're putting a motion that we pay $16 an hour, I was going to look at $16.50, knowing that we're not going to have a 6-month bump, after a 6-month probationary period. But I think, whether it's 16 or 16.50 or whatever the amount's going to be, that we can just do that tonight and then extend the offer to them.
The present rate of pay is $15.50, correct?
Right, $15.50.
Yes.
So we would bump it up either 50 cents or $1, whatever the amount is. The current motion is to provide her an extra 50 cents per hour at $16 per hour. And, I'm fine with that. I don't know if there's any other. Go ahead, Sally.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that when I created the budget line item, I did put the amount of time that I thought we would be at paying the first rate. And then beyond that, I didn't know what we were going to pay. So I put in $16.50 for each person after their 500 hours, just because I didn't have an answer. So I just wanted you to all be aware what is in the budget.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
And are you suggesting that you're waiving the probationary period, or that you're indicating that there wouldn't be the bump up or the review for bump up at the end of the probationary period? Because I don't have it out in front of me, but I believe our personnel manual provides for that probationary period. So if that's not going to be for this employee, then I think you need to have that specific.
Do we have anything in there to give credit for if they were gone through a temporary agency? Would we? So what is the current probation? Is that 6 months or 90 days?
6 months.
6 months.
6 months. And to my recollection, there's no provision in there for temporary, because I don't think that was contemplated at that time.
Well, then, and I guess I would be prepared to amend my motion then, is basically, if we are on the 6-month probationary period, we would use whatever time this individual has served to go towards that time period.
Okay.
And then would we provide a 50-cent increase at the expiration of that 6 months, or would we not?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that sounds fine.
Yeah. So let me restate what my motion would be: is that if everybody's satisfied with this individual, that we would make an offer to hire them at their current rate. They would be eligible for an adjustment after the conclusion of the probationary period, and whatever time they've served in the temporary status would be credited to that time.
Oh, goody.
So after the 6-month period from date of hire, they go to $16 an hour.
Date of hire or date of hire as a temporary?
Date of hire as a temporary.
Now, is Mr. Graham going to amend his, second the amendment?
Yes, I will second the amendment.
Okay.
Any discussion?
We need a name of an individual.
Oh, true. Chris Gibler. And just to be clear that if this is approved, we do not need to have the admin team confirm this. It'll just be tonight, it'll be done, and we will offer her that job.
Well, we pretty much got the good portion of the admin team here, so I guess if they're in concurrence with that, I'm comfortable with that.
And then it would be with the regular benefits offered for part-time employees.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All right. If there's no other discussion, a roll call, please.
A minute, Mary added something.
Okay.
I got to put it in here. Mr. Malagranda,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan? Yes. Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kine.
All right, that's approved. Okay, we'll move on to my items. We have my report on file. Number 2, Mary Gross has asked to use the vacant lot between the police garage and the village hall to have the flag retirement ceremony. She originally was going to do it on Saturday, May 15th, which is Armed Forces Day. She then followed up and said that the Cub Scouts would like to be involved and they would like to do an overnight. They have a bunch of flags to burn as well. So what they were going to do is have a continual fire that would start Friday evening and into Saturday morning.
Scouts or Boy Scouts?
Either Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts, I don't remember, but one of the Scouts. And one of the concerns she had was if they could use a restroom, if they needed use of a restroom. And Kelly had looked at possibly renting, whether we could have a porta potty there instead of them having come into the village hall, throughout the night. So I wanted to put it out there first, just to get the approval from the trustees that they could perform this on the vacant lot. And then secondarily, seeing if there's any issues from police, if, they would have any issues with that going on Friday night into Saturday. And then what we would do in terms of, would we have a restroom facility or the ability to rent a porta potty for them to utilize? And Kelly, I don't know if you had the opportunity to contact a place to find out what the cost is or not yet.
I have not.
Okay.
I know it's not terribly convenient, but at that time of the year, would we already have porta potties over at the park? Is that close enough?
I would think that would be close enough for them to utilize.
Typically, I think last year, the cost of the porta pot that we have on contract is about $105 a month.
Okay.
Oh,
Last year we
I
didn't
don't know
have
what that would be for a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Since due to COVID, we didn't have them last year. So I'm assuming then we would this year? Or are we going to wait to determine whether or not
There
we
are
should
people
put
that,
them in the park?
yeah, I know what you mean. If you could call to find out when they normally would deliver them, do we have them year round or do they pick them up in the fall and drop them back off in the spring?
For some reason,
Yes.
April and November are in my head, but I'm not real sure since I haven't had to do it yet. But for some reason, I'm thinking April and November.
We actually just make sure that they're picked up before Halloween
Okay.
for obvious
all right.
reasons.
Gotcha.
So if you could follow up on that, Kelly, and see if they would be able to deliver them so they're there in place before the May 15th or May 14th event, then that would take care of it. So good suggestion, Mike, that we could use that porta potty, or they could use that porta potty. Any problems anyone sees with having them perform the task on our vacant lot?
Would they be putting in some type of a temporary wood burning thing so we don't have any, scarring of the ground, or, do you have any idea what their intentions are, whether they've got a pit or they're going to bring a steel fire pit or something?
In the past, what they've done is we've actually had the ceremony downtown, and we blocked off the downtown Benton Street for the block. And they use a big barbecue grill type of thing, probably about 4 feet long, and they light that and get it hot, and then they put the flags in there.
Okay, so no damage to this. So they've done that in the past in the street and everything. So as long as everything's in original condition when they leave.
Right. That if they do it the same way as they've always done, that would be how they would do it. So there should not be any type of immediate or long-term effect.
When we've done it in the village, in the street, or, do we have the ability that they have a place they can tap a hose off to or whatever, just for safety precautions off of the village police garage or something?
Yeah, we can run a hose under the door. They would have access to water.
Okay.
One other thing too, Kelly, if you have the opportunity when you talk to the porta potties, having a wash station for the kids.
Yes,
I think that's going to be necessary to have that there, seeing that we're in this COVID situation.
I agree. Yes.
And if we could also donate some hand sanitizer, we have enough of it here for Village Hall that a couple bottles of them for that overnight eating wouldn't hurt us any.
Okay, that's a good option. Anything else on this? Everyone okay that they perform that on the vacant lot?
No objections.
Okay. All right, we can move on to item 3, the status of the MediaCom and other providers of internet phone system. I reached out to MediaCom again, actually talked to 2 different people, and they will not work with us in any way unless we have our attorney talk to their attorneys. What they're saying is they can provide up to a gigabyte of internet service, which I never knew that they could. I was under the impression they can only give us 100 megabytes. So when I said that's all they could offer us and Comcast could offer 1 gig, they said, no, we can give you 1 gig if you want it. I said, well, you've also had many times where we've not had service and our police department can't operate. And they said outages are not covered in the contract as a way to get out. So again, they will not do anything to work with us. I even asked if we could lower our service so we could pay them something each month for the rest of the term. And they said if we lower it, we have to pay the full price under the contract because we're changing the term, so it's as though we're terminating anyway. So obviously MediaCom is not my friend. MediaCom has a terrible, in my opinion, ability to work with us. And so unless we decide to have Mary talk to the legal department, I don't know if we're going to be able to have a legal way to terminate the contract without paying anything. Our current contract says we have to pay 75% of the unpaid amount. And looking at what was left as of, and the other thing is if we were to go with Comcast, it'll take them some time to hook up. So we still need to go with MediaCom until that time happens. But it looks like if we canceled, let's say on June 30th of this year, we would still owe a total of $3,568.76 to disconnect, both from the village account and then the Public Works garage account. Our contract goes through April 19th of 2022 for one, and it goes through July 30th of 2022 for the other one. And then item 4, I'll need to talk about because it's in conjunction with what we're talking about, what Comcast is willing to offer us. And originally, what we currently pay is we pay $800.58 for phones, phone service, and for internet service to Public Works garage and the village office. And then we have phones also to our Public Works office on McNair. The original Comcast proposal was going to be for 1 gigabyte at the village office and 100 megabytes at the Public Works garage and also at the McNair Public Works facility. That would have totaled $1,152.70 a month. We actually are gaining Variety TV. We're gaining 5 static IPs with Comcast, and we're also gaining service to our Waterworks building, because currently it doesn't show that we're paying anything from MediaCom to our Public Works McNair building. So I don't know how we're getting service there, if it's from some other source. I asked for a requote from Comcast, and about 2 weeks ago or so, they came back with a 1 gigabyte for the village office and 200 megabytes for the Public Works garage and also for the McNair office. And it came back at $1,162.10 a month. I then said, well, we don't need the 1 gigabyte for the village office. We wanted the 200 megabyte. And today he provided me with the amount for the village office, for the Public Works garage and the McNair station, all the 200 megabytes. It would be a total of $1,042.10. One thing to kind of look at here is you need to break it down, and I apologize for not having the numbers, but I wasn't able to get to them until this afternoon, so I didn't have it to give to you. But right now, when we pay Sundogged and Frontier just for our phone service, we're paying $425.73 a month. Through Comcast, the same cost, having 7 seats and 7 phones at the village office, having 2 at the Public Works garage and 1 at the Waterworks on McNair, we would only be paying $338.85 for phone service. So it's actually going to save us money to go with Comcast versus Sundogged and Frontier. When you look at what MediaCom is providing for us, it's 60 megabytes download and 5 megabytes upload is what we were paying for. Now, I saw something recently on my residential one where they actually upped it to 100 megabytes. So that may have been what they're doing for the village. I think we have 100 up and 10 down for the village office, but we still have 60 and 5 for the Public Works garage. We also have 1 static IP. That altogether is $374.85. With this latest offer from Comcast, to have our Public Works garage or village office and have 1 static IP, it's $459.95. So it's an extra $80 for the same amount. The problem is we're getting extra from Comcast, which makes our bill higher, and that's the Select TV at $39.95 a month, 5 additional static IPs at $24.95 total per month. We then need the equipment for the office here and for the waterworks department, and that's $9.95 and then $18.45 a month. And then to have the waterworks department get the 200 megabytes down and 20 upload is $150 a month. So that's how we get the $703.25 for all of the internet, and that gives us our $1,042.10. So when you break it down, it's actually, we are getting a good benefit from Comcast. The cost is that really not that much different. We're just getting more. And so it would be fine, I think, to go with Comcast. But when we look at having to pay over $3,000 to terminate our MediaCom contract, and then I don't know if we have anything to pay Sundogget or Frontier. You know, that's a decision we're going to have to make. Is it worth paying MediaCom that amount to cut out, and then to pay $200 a month more for the next 2 years to get more? So any ideas on how you would like to proceed?
Comcast isn't willing to give you a month or two free, are they?
Well, you know, I told him the situation and he tried to work a better deal. But, you know, I can go back and talk to him and tell him again where we're at and what we're trying to do. But, you know, he didn't say that he'd be willing to give us a couple months free. Now, we could press him and say, look, you know, if we can't, if the dollars don't make sense, we can't do this. You know, if I tell him that if we can get $1,500 discounted or $2,000 discounted, you know, and you want to go forward, I can do that. But he didn't seem to think that, he didn't seem to offer that when I asked him what he could do for us.
And then one thing
What
I
was the
heard you
price?
say, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead and finish, Julie.
One thing I heard you say is MediaCom can give us what we want, but that's just one aspect of it, I presume, not everything. You said they could give us the gig and you didn't know, and can they give us what we need to make this work for the next year or not?
They can provide, they said they can provide more to us. So if we need 200 megabytes instead of the 100 megabytes, you know, we can contact them and say, what can you provide? And then we would not terminate because we're adding more to it. But again, it's going to raise our cost. So now instead of $800 a month, it's going to be more. Now, I don't know if it's going to be $100 more a month or what it's going to be. But then I think the concern is we don't have a backup. Whereas Comcast's backup was we could go to the cell tower. That was their backup. We would only have 60 megabytes download, but at least it would allow us something when our internet goes down.
What was the price difference between the gig and the 200 megs for the village? It was like 1141 and then 1084 or something.
We would save $120 if the village office went from 1 gigabyte down to 200 megabytes. We would save $120 per month.
I think that $120 is worth the gig itself, especially if all the police cars automatically transfer, plus if all of us have devices here that will be streaming when we come back. I know it's kind of a conversation for another day, but if we're willing to go to Comcast and say, hey, we'll take the more expensive package if you give us, you know, $100 off for the first 6 months so we can cover the cost of MediaCom.
I think what they came up with their latest deal is the original deal that they gave us that was the 1 gigabyte. They had the phone part of it, the 7 seats, 2 seats, and 1 seat. That was $428.90. They're now down to $338.85. So they're down $90 a month. And I think that's where they tried to give us a little bit of a break, was to bring us down $90 a month. And what he was hoping is that we could, if we couldn't cancel it, at least we could lower MediaComs down to a lower amount, so we'd be paying less than the $374.85 per month. So it would make it a little better. But since MediaCom's not working with us, we don't get that benefit as well.
I have one question. as far as their flagship router that's in our back office that continues to have problems. My understanding is they have no intention of replacing that with a system that works continuously or doesn't have to be reset on a regular basis. I looked at our speeds currently right now, 87.4 download and 6.86 upload.
Okay.
I guess my point is we continue to use a service that's inconsistent.
Right. And Jeff, that's something that I didn't know about. I don't know if that would be a trigger to have them be able to try and cure it, because they have 30 days to cure an issue. And if that's an issue that would allow us to terminate, they could replace it and then they've cured it. If they don't replace it, or they can't replace it, and allows us to terminate, then that could be a basis. But I think that's something where maybe you and Mary and I should talk about that, or maybe Kelly as well, just to see if we have an option to terminate that way.
Yeah, we've been tracking outages, times when we can't use our computers from the car. So it's either a VPN issue, but the VPN is run through the office here as well and through the MediaCom connection. So there are some issues we've run across. We have a alternate VPN that we have access to use in an emergency, so we can still do our work. But we could have that taken away from us if we start to use it too much.
So Jeff, is that not working because there's a total MediaCom outage in the whole village, or is it just pertaining to that particular unit? Everyone has MediaCom working, but that particular device is not working in the village.
Well, I mean, we've had to reset that device multiple times over the past 3 or 4 months because the connection is lost. We get emails from Sally Bennett when she's at home, says, well, I can't log in. Can you see what the problem is? We'll have to reset the router. We notify MediaCom. They say there's no problem, or, have not suggested replacing the router or anything like that. They just continue to operate the way it is.
Well, I have those same exact issues at home. So it has to be system wide and I don't know if it's the router, the modem, or if it's their service, their internet connection service, but that happens on a daily basis at my house. You log in, it disconnects you, you connect again, you have to turn it on and turn it back off at different times. So, again, if Mary, I don't know if you think that it would be something that we could have you contact them and say, look, this is something that's not working for us, and you've not addressed it, you've not replaced it, and it's something that they are to provide, then that may be an issue, that allows us to terminate. I think talking to the attorneys is going to be better than me talking to a service person, because I can't get above that particular service group of people.
Well, I would like to see a list of, maybe there can be a compilation of what all the problems are in turn, because then I think we have more ammunition to go against them. And then I would look at the contract. It's hard for me to believe that they can say that just outages, or I think that's the terminology you used, isn't a basis for termination. I mean, that if you either can provide the service or you can't. And what concerns me is that you are talking to somebody who I think, doesn't have probably decision-making power. And I kind of liken it to, I bought an iPhone 11 and had lots of problems with it. And, they say there's nothing wrong with them. And I, telling them all of these issues, and finally they're taking some resolution. So I think that you just have to get everything together and get to the right people, because that's incredulous to me that they can say that, basically, then whatever we offer you, and if it doesn't work, too bad.
Right. I mean, that's been their stance, and
I guess my other question would be if we choose to increase our service with them, are they going to require a signing of a new contract if you increase the service?
Right. And I don't think we're happy necessarily with the service anyway. I mean, but we can, I mean, I think we should explore what we can do to terminate the contract rather, and then if we find out that we can't terminate it, then we see what they can do to make our connection better.
Yeah, I guess, and that's what I would look. I struggle with this topic every time we have it because I work from home. We had Frontier in the past, and I will admit Frontier was miserable. I've had MediaCom probably for about 3 years now. I work out of home most every day. The service is virtually flawless. Right now we're on a video call. Normally I probably get 120 to 130 download. Even on this video call, I just checked it at 92 download and 16 upload. We've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 people. We've had 16 people. We've been on this call for, over 2 hours. Nobody's dropped off. Nobody's had a problem. So, again, maybe some of the stuff is the wireless connectivity, which maybe with the police cars and everything. And, obviously I'm hardwired into this here or whatever. So, I guess that's why I struggle having to pay those type of cancellation fees where I've got almost flawless service from MediaCom. Maybe we got newer wires in this part of town. I can't tell you what it is. But
I think you do, Mike. I think you do have newer wires in your area. I know over by me, I have to run on data. I can't even work from home on MediaCom. I have to hook to my hotspot on my phone, which is what I'm doing now, in order to be able to join any kind of video call. We can't even stream a movie if we turn off every device except for the TV. We can't even stream a movie. The service here is so poor.
And maybe that's the data we got to come up with, Frank, to bite, because, again, obviously I'm looking at it from my perspective, but if we start getting some of the feedback from other residents and so forth, that there are pockets of this village that cannot get sufficient service, then that may support the argument of, how to get out of that contract.
I can tell you that over the years, we've had people come to us and say, when can we get Comcast? They're current MediaCom members or other subscribers. And I see on the Winnebago community Facebook page, in the last week, people are asking, when is Comcast coming? How soon can Comcast come? Because, are there any alternatives to MediaCom? And as Lori is saying, I have those same issues. There are times when it's flawless, but there are times when I try and log in and it says I can't. And I don't know if it's because there are multiple devices trying to log in at home, but I have noticed there are times when I do have issues. So
yeah, but I think that's what we need to dig into. If there's something in certain areas of the village that are, and hey guys, you know what? Yeah, maybe your service coming into town is good, but you've got outdated wiring or whatever in certain areas, and if we can pull that information together, then that should give us the leverage of probably exiting out of it.
Well, and do you want to put something on that community page? It seems like people aren't hesitant at all to give their opinion on that page.
Yeah, and again, maybe we can check some of the names, because it does come up often enough, and there's 50% that says it's great, and there's 50% that says it's terrible. So maybe we ought to identify where the 50% are coming from. And I'm saying 50% as a rule. It could be 60, 40, 40, say, I don't know. But there seems to be two groups out there, happy ones and not so happy ones.
Yeah.
Well, aren't most of the newer subdivisions all run underground, and the older part of the town is overhead wires?
Right, we have overhead in the old part. And it doesn't seem like MediaCom has done a lot of maintenance over the years in our area, so that could be part of the issue as well.
Would we use the same lines?
They weren't too slow to come out. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sally.
I'm sorry. I was just curious if anybody knows, would we use the same lines for Comcast?
Comcast, excuse me, they have their own lines that they're bringing in.
Okay. Because I know, like with the phone companies, that was a thing, like a reciprocal agreement that they had.
Right. I'm not aware that Comcast has an agreement with MediaCom to use their lines. My understanding that they have their own lines coming in. It's a different service. And then
Okay.
that's why they're only going to the businesses down Elida Street. And then they have not committed to going to the residences because they'd have to put that infrastructure in. We would, I told them before, and I'll keep telling Comcast again that we do have residents that are interested, and it's up to them to decide if they want to make a push to then make it available to the residents and get it out to certain areas.
Yeah, I don't know how it works on the cable companies or whatever, but I know that, when we had the business on Kishwaukee Street, it didn't matter what phone service company we went to. AT&T had all the wires under the street, and until they redid Kishwaukee Street, we were kind of out of luck. Eventually, we did go to Comcast, and we had to pay dearly because we weren't close enough to get to them, and we had to finally leverage enough businesses to get on there, so they had enough businesses willing to go on to overcome that last mile or whatever they had tied lines in on.
The other thing that Comcast is doing is they're waiving their normal about $4,000 installation or connection fee. And I'm guessing that's similar to the Rock River Water Commission and our connection fee to a service. They have the expense to run it down, and they would charge each customer for part of that expense, and they're waiving that. The only installation cost that we have is a one-time $521.35. And that's for the installation of the phones and some other equipment. So yeah, so we won't have to pay that additional charge to have them come our direction.
One other difference that I remember being in the meetings with Pat Pierce was that with Comcast, the internet ran separately than the data and the voice for the telephones. And currently with MediaCom, they're one and the same. So if the internet goes down, the phones go down. But with Comcast, that would not be the case. We would still, if the internet was lost or if there was a problem with their line, we would still have access to our phones. Where currently with MediaCom, we don't. And to me, that's a bigger issue than having a slower service.
Actually, I believe they said too, even if the internet went down over the cable, there would still be a connection through the phone system. So
right.
You would never actually lose that internet connection. They had a redundant.
You're right. There was like a backup service for that.
I wasn't sure if it was through the cell tower.
Right.
Or if it was through the phone line, but they did have a redundancy for the backup. And so they pretty much you would always have the ability to have connection. It may not be as fast, but you'd have the ability to have internet connection. So,
those few days that we didn't have access to the phones or the internet was a problem.
Right. So is there anything that you want us to find out from Comcast? And these deals that they offer constantly change. So the one that I just reported may or may not be available next week. So I can ask him if he knows if this will be good for another week or two, or if he knows of any ones that are coming down. I can obviously tell him that you're reluctant to move forward because the cost is still so much time, and additional cost for Comcast itself.
Probably one of the key things, and you alluded to it earlier specifically, is what is their lead time on connections? I mean, if you're the closer we get to the end of the contract, the less burden you got to bear. If they're out 5 to 6 months to put this thing in, they get that much time left, it becomes not an issue.
He couldn't tell me that because I asked him, and he said, I can't tell you when it's going to be, but they've already connected to the fire department. So they're down here. I just don't know if they have to put in a work order, and that work order may take 6 weeks because they've got their employees going from here to there and everywhere else over the next 6 weeks. That he couldn't commit to and say what it would be, but he said, yes, you would want to keep MediaCom until they could get it installed.
My understanding, the cabling is already here in the alleyway, waiting to be connected.
All right, so I guess Jeff and Kelly, if you could, and anybody else, work with Mary to provide her with a list of items that have not been working for us, then we can contact MediaCom to find out if we can terminate based upon any of those items. And then what I would suggest is maybe Kelly and Jeff, and if Chad, if you want to, and we can, and Sally, I don't know if you were involved the last time, but we can sit with Pat Purse again and just let him know where we're at and what we're looking for, and see what he can do to maybe make a little bit better offer. So any other thoughts?
Could we waive franchise fees in exchange for the amount that we need to pay MediaCom?
I don't know if I'd go that route, because we don't want to mess up what we're doing, and I think they have an obligation under the agreement to pay them. So, I mean, we could take those fees and put them towards that. So I would rather collect those fees and put it towards that. But I mean, good. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is think outside the box. You know, what options do we have?
So is it my understanding, Frank, Stephanie King runs the community page, right?
I believe so, yes.
Do we want to approach her, maybe put out there to them, say, you know, Winnebago customers that use MediaCom, can you give us your pros and cons, and just see what kind of reaction we get?
We can. I think there are two separate issues here. We as the village have contracted with MediaCom to provide cable to our residents. We as the village have also contracted with MediaCom to provide cable or internet and that to the village offices. And the fact that MediaCom is not providing for our residents is not the same as MediaCom not providing for us individually, because we're a separate customer. Now, if the idea is that we've got 50% of our village customers are not getting good quality, I suppose we could utilize that and say that we're part of that 50% not getting good quality, and maybe that would help us. But I don't want it to be like, if we show that we have bad service all around, we can just jump to Comcast for everybody. I don't want the general public to believe that we're doing this to find out so that we can switch everyone to Comcast. I mean, if we're putting it out there, asking them for their issues, it's just going to be so we can report their issues to MediaCom as a general group and leave it at that.
Could have some negative backlash too if we put it out there and then we end up switching, and then they're going to be like, oh, they just used our information to get ahead themselves and didn't worry about the residents.
Right. I mean, there is that possibility too.
How long does our franchise agreement with MediaCom go?
Isn't it perpetual, Mary?
Yes, that's my recollection.
I guess at some point, obviously, we know that the Comcast initial desire is the corridor with the business corridor to try to get in there. But at some point, once they start establishing an infrastructure, they're going, so at what point do we have to deal with, okay, we are hearing a lot of residential complaints or whatever, and now you got a new vendor looking to so how do we eventually solve that issue? Or is the is that an exclusive service agreement, or is there room for a second?
You can have more than one, because we dealt with that when Comcast was first coming in. So the issue that I think we need to look at, though, is how do we get franchise fees from Comcast? Because they came into Foresight. They're now going down and they're actively pursuing businesses along the way that are joining. Do we just get
Frank,
franchise fees on the cable and not the internet?
currently, that's the only thing we can do is collect it on television services. When the bank signed up, I was like, where are our franchise fees? And it was explained to me that it's not for internet, only for TV.
So now if the village gets Comcast, we will have a TV component at $39.95 a month. So then if we pay any type of franchise fee, let's just say let's say Micron wants TV in there for their employees, then at some point would we get franchise fees from there? I think that's something we probably want to think about, especially if they branch out to residents. All right, so anything else on these issues? And if anyone thinks of anything, let me know or let Mary know, or just,
Well, I guess one probably key point is, what is our notification time? Assuming this thing drags out a little while longer, at what point do we have to notify MediaCom that we are going to cancel so it doesn't get an automatic renewal or something?
like I said, it's April of 2022 for one office. It's July of 2022 for the other office.
Yeah, but many of them will have languages in there that if you don't notify us 90 days in advance, it automatically renews or something. That's the only thing I'm talking about, is making sure we don't get stuck in an automatic review if we haven't notified them we are canceling.
Well, and Mike, I texted Kelly and asked her to get me a copy of the signed contract, so I can look at that and then answer that specifically, and to see what their terms are for termination.
Yeah, I've gotten stuck with a couple of them deals before. They're like a contract, and if you don't notify us 30 or 60 days in advance, it automatically renews for another 5 years. And it's like,
Yeah, we have to provide them 30 days notice. It says if either party materially breaches its representations, warranties, covenants, agreements, or obligations, the other party may terminate this agreement upon at least 30 days prior written notice, unless that breach is cured within the notice period. MediaCom, in its discretion, may terminate this agreement in whole or as to one or more services at any time upon 60 days prior written notice. So they have the ability to cancel it without any backlash from us with 60 days notice.
But there's no automatic renewal or anything in there for them if we don't give them a certain amount of notice?
I'm skimming through this just to see if there is a notice period for that.
But I can take a look at that once she gets me the
Sure.
contract.
Yep, yeah, I don't see it right here. I've got it, so we can take a look. But thanks for mentioning that, Mike. We can put that in our list of contracts too, when the contract term is up and when we have to provide notice, so that we can keep track of that. So I think Kelly and Sally, you two are sort of keeping track of those, and we'll need to update those. So Mary, when you find that out, let Kelly and Sally know and they can update our list, please.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, if there's nothing further, we'll go on to number 5, which is discussion regarding committees submitting resolutions for board action. Something that I was thinking about over the last few months is trying to see if we could make a board meeting go a little more quickly. And as Mary alluded to earlier in the meeting, we're doing more and more resolutions, so we have a paper trail of why we did something. And what we can do is, other municipalities I've seen do this, is the committee actually has a resolution. So Public Works have a resolution for a salt purchase or whatever it might be. And they would actually then have the resolution presented to the board. So in the board packet, we'd have a resolution. It would state what's going to happen, and they would have any documentation attached to it. That way, we don't have to take the time to necessarily discuss in length the general board meeting what's going on, because we do already have that resolution in place. And it's just the general board looking at the resolution and the attachments. We do a good job of providing the attachments, but if there's a possibility at the committee level to have that resolution ready for the board meeting rather than us talking about it at the board meeting, or Mary trying to, I know Mary's trying to do a good job of getting a resolution together, but if we can just have it passed at the committee level, then it might make it easier. And I'm just suggesting it, so think about how that might work at your committees, and if that might, if you can incorporate that at committee level and then bring it back up, because I've seen it in Rockford, I've seen it at the Winnebago County and how they do it, and it seems to allow for faster board meeting on those particular issues.
And Frank, just to clarify, are you saying that the resolution would be presented at the board meeting, or that the committee is passing a resolution at their committee level?
The committee is going to draft have the resolution drafted for the board meeting. So like you've done for tonight, what we would do is salt purchase. We probably want to have a resolution for the salt purchase. The committee would say, you know, we're gonna have a resolution for the salt purchase of $10,000. That would come as a resolution. It would have attached to it any documentation that needed to be attached to it, so the board members would understand, and then that would be in our board packet. So it may or may not apply very often. I don't know, but I just thought I'd put it out there if that's something that would.
Well, I mean, aren't you kind of simply restating what is done in many cases, but not all? I mean, if we've hammered these things out at the committee meeting, we're bringing a recommendation by committee, they fly through. The ones that tie everything up is when they're open-ended and we really haven't vetted them out at the committee meeting.
Right, and that's somewhat true. You know, the thing I guess I'd be looking at is if we have a new hire, that's where we'd want a resolution, because we'd want the terms of the hire in that resolution instead of bringing it to the board necessarily and then adding several things. So, you know, certain things like that there might be a lot to it, even though it's recommended at the committee level. When you have to regurgitate it at the board level and listen to the reason why, that could be cut out if it's in the resolution. It'd be in the whereas and then in a part of it. And that way we would already know what it's regarding. We'd know all of the details. We necessarily wouldn't have to. The salt purchase is not a good one because there's nothing to it. I mean, it's just a very basic thing, but any more detailed things, I would think a resolution might be a better way to try and go.
Oh yeah, I would agree if there's, you know, a hiring decision or something at a higher level, yeah, all that stuff is brought out. So all the documents, you know, that I would agree with. I was just concerned that some of the more trivial things that would seem to be overkill.
Right, and I agree. So I'm just putting it out there that if you have some of these more in-depth things, and you feel maybe a resolution might be better to set out everything, then consider having a resolution ready for the board meeting rather than just presenting it at the board and then.
Well, I mean, a case in point maybe, which is probably going to come up for April, that, you know, we could do a little substance on it, is we're about ready to put through in for approval in April is a very large road project. That would probably be one that, you know, some of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and, you know, and again, usually we do anyways. Normally, you know, Fairgram has put together a pretty good overview and all those documents are in the board package. So it's not necessarily in the form of a resolution, but we do have all the details that are hammered out, presented to the board and hammered out in committee before they would ever come up to it.
Sure. Yeah. So, all right. So yeah, if you feel that a resolution may be helpful, you know, do so. If not, I mean, again, it wouldn't happen all the time, but, and I know, Mary, you're doing a great job of trying to get the resolutions as we need them. And so it'd be pretty much the type of thing, just having a resolution available at the board meeting if we need it done that way. All right, and then next item is future meeting dates.
Public Works,
Public Works is scheduled for Monday, the 5th at 4:00 PM.
Police,
To be determined.
finance,
Finance is, my calendar's all over, here we go. April 12th at 5:30.
community development,
Do not know. I don't think we scheduled.
July, do not know. Liquor commission,
To be determined.
Parent Water will be before the meeting on the 12th. Admin,
I think it's to be determined. We have several that are sitting out there.
Trustee is April 21st,
Correct.
right?
Yep, at 5:30.
Okay. And then Tech Parade Pass,
That's Friday, March 19th at 9:30. Mike, I think you mentioned that I don't know if you might be available. Is there anybody that is thinking of attending on behalf of the village? If anyone is, then let Kelly know.
Yeah, I will probably attempt to it. I just may not be able to fulfill the whole duration of it. So I'll send the people at Peck Parade Path a message and I'll copy Kelly on it.
Thank you.
I think that's all.
All right.
We do
thanks,
need to
Jeff.
schedule that special board
Special
meeting.
board meeting?
That's under new business.
Fair enough.
All right, we're at new business. Mr. Graham? Need to schedule a special board meeting for the appropriations ordinance, and then also, I think we had set over an additional item. We had laid over additional item.
It was
That was on the
4th of July.
fireworks.
Fireworks, yep.
I thought there was one other thing too.
It was gonna be the new
The
staff.
hiring.
Yep.
We
Sorry,
settled
what'd
that.
you say?
The hiring
It
of
was
the
the
admin.
hiring.
Oh, hiring. Oh, yeah, yeah. Got it, got it.
When do you want this special board meeting?
How's next Tuesday, April 6th or March 16th? Will that give enough time to contact fireworks?
Kelly?
Yes, I will contact them tomorrow.
What time on the 16th?
You guys want to do 5:30? This thing should take like 5 minutes.
I'm open to any time.
That works for me.
Yeah, no sooner than 5:30, 5:30 or 6, somewhere in there.
I can't do Tuesday at all, but
Okay. Is there a particular day that works for you, Lori?
any day but Tuesday. Tuesday got kids going opposite directions. So
How's Thursday, March 18th? Same time.
It'd have to be after 6 for me.
6:15?
anytime on Thursday is fine for me.
Is 6:15 available for everybody?
Fine by me.
I'll try. You guys can start without me if I don't make it. I just have a client meeting that could go long.
Okay.
6:30?
Yeah, that'd be better.
Okay,
All right.
so Thursday, March 18th at 6:30, is that okay for everybody? Okay, so we'll set it for that evening, and then Kelly, you'll just need to make sure we have the agenda prepared and posted the proper time.
Yes. I'm
Thank you.
noting that on my calendar right now.
Perfect. All right, any other new business? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Jeremy Graham will make that motion.
Second.
Dan Mel,
Second from Julia O'Rourke.
Seconded.
Julia O'Rourke seconded. All right. Roll call, please.
Sure, I lost my paper. Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Kynes, Mr. Malagranda,
yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for meeting tonight.
Have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Night.
Night.